All right. So you guys know I tried my best to react to the Piers Morgan interview that he and some feminist had with Pearl Davis, also known as Just Pearly Things, where they were talking about, for some reason, why women shouldn't be allowed to vote. And it was just like an awful debate because neither one was doing a great job. In the interview, Piers Morgan said, "We should have you on another time soon." Well, he did have her on another time soon. She did come back again on the program to say, "I'm tired of women whining," I guess. Now this is about, I guess the Chiron here says, should misgendering be a crime? That's an easy answer. No, it shouldn't be a crime. But I'm kind of curious to see what this devolves into, because the last debate that we saw with these people was hilariously awful.
Well, joining me in the studio is socialist and author Grace Blakely and
Oh, they got a socialist, okay.
YouTube commentator Pearl Davis, both, I would imagine, identifying as provocateurs.
Of course.
Interesting. I have not seen any content from a left-wing provocateur. The part of it is like the left wing sort of like, they're very much about like not offending anyone, so they don't really have any fun edgelords.
Let's talk about this first of all. Pearl, I just find the whole personal pronoun thing honestly absurd. My personal pronouns on my Twitter biography are now hot, hotter, hottest. And frankly, if people don't call me those, then they have to be jailed. I go along with that. But I did that to highlight that when I do that and say that, people then accuse me of being ridiculous. I think the whole thing is ridiculous.
Which is funny because it's not just like, you know, people saying he, him, she, her. There's like Z's, her. There's like demon, self, right? So it's not like a thing where, oh, you can't make up your own pronouns. Yes, you can. You guys have been doing it all the time on Twitter and Tumblr.
Ridiculous. Why do we need personal pronouns?
We don't need personal pronouns. I don't think it's kind to allow people to live in delusion.
Wait, are you
at the end of the day,
pronouns?
at the end of the day, at the end of the day, at the end of the
Why don't you let her talk? Goodness, you can't debate someone if they can't even make their own point.
day.
Other than
We don't
the
look.
regular.
We all know what a
language.
man and a woman is. Okay, just because you dress like a woman, talk like a woman, act like a woman, it does not make you a woman. And I am
Believe me, some of these people are not acting like women, I'll tell you that much.
so tired of us allowing these people to let us live in delusion. It is delusional to think you are the opposite gender, and it is not kind to
I can't
enable
even
that.
go on. I love flying British Airways, right? My preferred airline, a wonderful airline. And they always used to. There always be a lovely posh voice saying, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Britain." And I used to felt soothing, particularly if I came from another country back to Britain. I felt immediately at ease. My captain was there, sounding like he was, you know, from some wonderful Pathé News bulletin, and he referred to us as ladies and gentlemen. That's now been banned. They're not allowed
That's
to
crazy.
say.
That's absolutely crazy. Although I must say, it's not like a massive inconvenience if some pilot can't say ladies and gentlemen. I think it's worse if you're saying, oh, Piers Morgan can't say ladies and gentlemen. Not a newbie can't say ladies and gentlemen. That's a bit worse than, you know, not hearing somebody else say it. Because it's like, what are you going to do? Be like, oh, well, I was going to fly back to London, but, you know, my flight's ruined. Now that the pilot can't say ladies and gentlemen anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, because there might be one person on the plane who says, oh, whoa, whoa, hang on. I don't identify as a lady or a gentleman. Well, okay, fine. I don't care. But I do. So where's my right to be called a gentleman?
Piers, you know how I feel about this.
That's an interesting point, too, where it's like, you know, there are going to be ladies there. There are going to be gentlemen there. It's not bad to refer to those people, right?
I'm so bored of it all. I'm so bored of the fact that this is the one item that's constantly coming up over and over and over again. And you could...
But people on her side of the aisle are pushing this cultural issue, right? So you can't, you know, argue for all of this like LGBT agenda stuff and then be like, it's so awful that people keep on talking about this cultural issue that I keep on pushing onto other people.
You can completely see why, right? Conservative governments have destroyed our economy. We're in the middle of a massive climate crisis just after the hottest week ever. I've just come over from Europe. It's extremely hot. And instead of talking about that, we spend hours and hours and hours talking about pronouns, talking about going into...
This is a red herring. It's actually what aboutism, really. This has nothing to do with this. She could be right for all I know, but this doesn't make this debate irrelevant entirely. And you know, she's basically running away from the topic because she doesn't want to answer the question.
The bathrooms, talking about, you know, all of this stuff that just doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you see, it doesn't matter.
If it doesn't matter, leave. You're here to talk about this, okay?
Hang on. But hang on, it doesn't matter to you.
I'm so bored.
It doesn't matter to
Piers.
you, but it does matter to women.
Also, I love how she's like, you know, it doesn't matter when I'm pretty sure she's gonna have a very strong opinion about misgendering.
In sport, it does matter to women whose young daughters might be using these dressing rooms. It does matter to the victims of male rapists who see their attackers identify as women to get into women's prisons. Sorry, so when you say they don't matter, they really do matter.
Let's have those issues aired in the appropriate, you know, spaces.
We are.
Television is not appropriate space? What in the world?
In, you know, in sports, have that discussion amongst sports people. But, like, literally, it's about priorities, isn't it? There is a certain number of times that we have on these shows to discuss the issues that matter.
You don't think women's... Hang on, before we come to our next...
I don't think women's sport matters as much as climate change.
Does women's...
I think...
Okay. Okay there, Blakely. It's so funny because I'm quite sure that once they get her to talk about this topic, she's going to care a lot. She's going to care a lot.
I think, like, having a planet in which we can play sport matters more than the rules of sport.
Does women's equality matter?
I know that makes me probably absolutely
Does women's
insane.
Equality matter to you?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, but actually, I mean, the whole point like, that I was going to make on this segment, actually...
Hold on, okay? If women's equality matters, then this topic matters. Right. If women's rights matters, if men's rights matters, if human rights matter to you, then this is something that's going to matter to you, regardless of whether or not you're on the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle, because this is something that affects it, right? No matter which way you view it politically, if you support misgendering or you condemn misgendering, this is something that affects human rights, in women's rights, in men's rights.
That, like, you cannot separate feminism from class issues. Like, if you're just going around saying, like, I don't know, I think the female CEO of a weapons manufacturer should be paid the same as a male CEO, and that's the hill I'm going to die on. I'm not fighting that fight with you, because ultimately, like, what I care about are the struggles that ordinary women face every day.
Well, let's come to the main point of the segment, which is this issue of women's rights to be paid the same as men in sport. Now, the Australian women's football team have criticised the pay gap in the upcoming World Cup prize money. Let's take a look at what they said as a team.
736 footballers have the honour of representing their country on the world's biggest stage, this tournament.
Yet many are still denied the basic right to organise and collectively bargain.
Collective bargaining has allowed us to ensure we now get the same conditions as the Socceroos, with one exception. FIFA will still only offer women 1/4 as much prize money as men for the same achievement.
Doesn't the prize money come from advertising, viewership, television ratings, tickets sold at the stadium? I could be wrong, but generally from what I hear, that's where that money comes out of, right? Not as many people watch women's soccer. Let's watch men's soccer. So you're not going to have an equal pool of which to distribute money from. Right? It's just not going to work. You would need to get more ratings in order to get higher pay. You could be paid even disproportionately in comparison to the revenue that you're pulling in for the organization that you're playing soccer for. But you know, if you're not getting as many ratings, then I don't know what to tell you.
Evening.
Well, okay, this is an interesting, Pearl, because if you look at the revenue, for example, in 2019, FIFA generated £586 million in total revenue. The men's, for the 2019-22 cycle, 5.8 billion. Record revenue through the Men's World Cup. So the women's game has come on in leaps and bounds. The English Lionesses, fantastic win, sell-out crowds, they're making a lot more money. They're definitely way, way further now towards where the men are commercially than they were, but they're still a way off. And when you saw at Wimbledon, for example.
And that's a good point, too. It's like, there's a question of how do you get the ratings to be better? And, you know, you can't hate on the women too much. for doing their best, because that's what they're doing. They're not doing it halfway, right? They're doing their best when they put it all out on the field. So maybe it's not entirely their fault that they don't have the ratings that they want, that they would need in order to get paid equally.
And when you saw at Wimbledon, for example, the men's final was watched by 3 times as many people, and yet they were both free to air on the BBC. You could watch both if you wanted to. So there was 3 times as much interest in the men's game. They played 2 sets more per match.
Well, hold on now. So if the men are getting 3 times as many, viewers as the women are, and the women are getting paid 1/3 of the pay that the men are getting, I'm gonna sit here and say that seems fair, right? It sounds like they're getting equal pay per viewer
Than the women do, and yet the women get equal pay. I'm not quite sure why. I don't think it's a matter of equality. It's just a matter of fairness, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I won. I think all of the women should thank the men for funding our leagues, because most of our leagues would not exist without the men, number one.
What?
Number two.
What? It's not even entirely relevant. What do you mean funding the leagues? I'm so confused. What this came out of left field?
When we have the same numbers, then we should get the same pay.
That's true.
I'm sorry,
No, you are getting the same pay. You're getting the same pay per viewer that you're getting on television. And then there's the difference between gross pay and, your compensation and how that all is factored out. But it sounds like basically they have the same contract, more or less, as the men do.
I play volleyball at the highest level, and it's like, when we make what the men make and get the crowds that the men draw, then we should get paid the same.
Also, why is it actually a fight for equality, Grace? I mean, why, if women in a particular sport, for example, turned out to generate more revenue, right, because they were more watchable, and in America, the women's football team is better than the men, and they do generate, even at school level, far more interest from girls than boys, for example, I don't see why equality should be the aim. Why shouldn't they get paid more than the men?
Well, look, I mean, there are all sorts of problems with the way that this market for labour, and it is basically a market for labour, works. Like, I personally...
Yo, she's gonna run away from the topic. She's not going to address the question of is it bad for women to get paid more than men? Because it's clearly bad for men to get paid more than women.
Don't think that the top football players in the world should be paid as much as they do. I think it's ridiculous, the amount.
That's market force.
Exactly. It's market forces.
Well, why shouldn't they get
that? Should that be the way that we decide, who generates what? Personally, I'm very much in favour of the fact that they came out there and said collective bargaining. Ultimately, the average worker in this country hasn't had a pay rise in over a decade. How is that going to change? That's going to change when they...
Let her speak. I know she's spoiling the food, but let her continue to cook.
Organize with one another.
I am so tired of women whining.
Mate, it's the only person whining at the moment is you.
Literally, the men fund our leagues, and we will still whine that we don't get paid enough.
Also, what is this, ad hominem attack? That she's whining? She's complaining, but she's making articulate points. You could just be like, you're just whining. What is this?
And honestly, when athletes do shit like this, it makes all of us look bad. Because instead of being thankful for the league that we have, we go out and whine and complain about the pay.
I mean, as I said,
I don't think that's a rhetoric that you should use. Oh, they should be thankful that they're making any money at all. It's not something to be like, oh, you're getting paid fairly? Well, you should just be thankful that you're getting paid fairly. Who talks like that?
I'm not whining. You sound like you're maybe doing a bit of whining. But personally, I don't think we should be whining. I think people should be organising. If you want a pay increase, join a union, get out there and fight for it.
Also, I like this too, because even though I don't agree with her, it's don't just whine and complain online. Actually do something in the real world that will affect some change.
Should the women footballers get the same as the men?
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense.
Even if they're not making anything like the revenue?
Ultimately, it's not going to change.
She's not answering that question, right? Should women get paid the same as the men, even if they're making less revenue for the organization?
Unless they organise. That's actually true across every sector of the economy. If you want a pay rise, join a union and fight for one.
Let me ask you this, though. They have got unions.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this. On talent alone, for example, as a yardstick, the US women's football team were beaten by a group of under 15 boys from Texas.
Yo, I am going to love seeing what her response is to this.
Right? who were very good, under-15 boys, but their under-15 boys team beat them, I think, about 8-9-0 or something. So why should women footballers, who are clearly nowhere near as good as their male counterparts, just technically, why should they get paid anything like as much money?
Well, I mean, you know, it sucks, doesn't it, that, like, as a woman, yeah, okay, you're a volleyball. I'm a surfer. I absolutely love surfing. It's very hard for women to build up a body strength. This is something that I've learned very much the hard way. And so,
surfers, by the way, there is equal pay.
Yeah, there is. And actually, you know, it's one of those sports where...
Can a woman be as good as a man or not?
Well, it's different. It's a different sport, really. It's not, you know, it is the same sport, but it's very different watching a woman surf than it is watching a man surf because, you know, the average male body is different from the average woman, like, woman's body for all these...
But is there any actual technical reason why a woman can't do with a surfboard what a man can do?
Yeah, there's loads of reasons. Like, it is about the upper body strength. It's about, like, the way that the body is built.
So
I'm surprised at the honesty here, actually. I mean, I gotta give some credit to her. She's giving some reasonable responses.
Women surfers at the elite level get the same as men.
But, like, again, I think it just is different. Like, it's a different kind of game, and people watch it, I think,
you're
for different
shaking your head.
reasons.
How is it different? I don't
just
understand.
think...
Hold on. How is it different, though? See, I wish that they rush these segments, right? And this is one thing about cable television, right? It's not really genuine conversations, right? These are kind of like staged grudge matches on the internet or on television. And then they get put on the internet just to generate clicks and views. And I guess I'm participating in that. But, like, at the same time, like, I wish that she had more time to articulate, like, what it was that she was saying. She says the sports are different. She says that surfing is fundamentally different than soccer. How? When it comes to the difference in upper body strength and whatnot, like, what is it about those games that's actually different? I was kind of curious to see where she was going to go with that, but, you know, just Pearly Things started shaking her head, and Piers Morgan said, "Oh, you over there, speak."
When we start making the same amount of money as the men, then we should get paid the same as the men.
She said this like 3 or 4 times already. How many times is she going to keep on saying the same thing over and over and over again?
I don't hear the men whining about OnlyFans models getting paid more than them. I don't hear the men whining about models getting paid more than them. Kendall Jenner is the highest paid supermodel. Where are the male supermodels? But whenever men dominate in an industry, women will just complain.
She brings up an interesting point that there are some fields in which women are paid more than men. I don't think it's maybe the best comparison, but it would be a good question to be like, should male models get paid as much as the Jenners, even though you don't even know the names of these male models? They're not famous. They're not particularly successful, which is why they're not getting paid as much. It's a genuine question.
I mean, I don't know if that's true about OnlyFans, because there are a lot of men on OnlyFans as well. But I mean, look.
Do they make as much money though?
You think they make the same?
I have no idea. But like, maybe if you averaged out the number of men and women that are on that website. Anyway, look, the main point here, the point that I came on here that I wanted to make was that the problem that we have in our economy at the moment is not that like the average football player isn't paid the same as the average man. It is probably an injustice, and I'm glad that they're organising and working together to fight for that. But ultimately, the problem we have in our economy is that nobody's getting paid enough money because inflation's eroded people's wages. Even before that, no one had a pay rise in a really long time. And the lesson
but she's changing the topic.
Is, as I've said, I'm going to...
This conversation is supposed to be about gender, like, I guess sex and gender, right? Minimum wage. Now she's talking about a minimum wage. Like, she's trying to use this opportunity that Piers has given her, and I kind of sympathize to a certain extent, to use this as some sort of soapbox where she could talk about whatever issues she is the most aggrieved about. But it doesn't really logically follow the conversation that they're supposed to be having.
Say it again because it's an important lesson and no one knows about them anymore because they see them as a hangover from the 1970s. Join a union because otherwise your boss is going to walk
but there
away
are unions for all these. They're all just the unions that are fighting for them.
Exactly.
But just as a general point, the principle you think that women should get paid the same even if they're not as technically as good and not producing as much revenue.
It's a subjective judgment, isn't it, on whether or not they're like technically as good?
Technicality is literally objective. That's why it's technical. What in the world?
It's not. No, it's not.
Because people watch men and women's sports for different reasons.
Well, let me give an example.
Man. It is really tough because she said some things that made sense and she admitted some truths that were nice, but also she said stuff like this. Like, what?
Would be the Olympics. If you made it non-gender specific, how many women would win medals?
Well, I mean...
None.
Okay.
I mean, maybe in equestrian, and maybe in shooting, I think, are the two.
But again, I think...
Where there's no sense that the men might win.
You can say, like, oh, you know, this group is better than this group. But again, I think it's different.
Men are better than women at sports. Yes, let's not live in...
The difference is kind of the point, though. I love how, like, whenever he corners her, she's just like, oh, it's different. You see? It's different. Yes, we know it's different. And that's what the conversation is all about, right?
This delusion.
And in most cases, Grace,
sports.
more people, men and women, want to watch men play sport.
Correct.
That's just a demonstrable fact. That may change. And my point is, if it changes, I don't see why equality should be the only ambition for the women. If it turns out that in some sport women get more viewers watching and therefore draw more revenue, I'm all for them getting more money than the men.
Can you name 5 WNBA players? 5 female soccer
players?
This
is a fun
I mean, I can't name any soccer players
That's
already.
crazy. I wish we had the support from the feminists.
I don't
we
know.
would get equal pay if we would just get the support from the feminists.
Well, let me
that's a good question, but it just doesn't work when you're talking to someone who's not American.
Let me tell you.
Name 5.
Let me tell you.
I don't even know what the WNBA is.
We need our support.
That makes her point, though.
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah, you really are.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention one thing, which is I had Dale Vince on the programme. He's been funding Just Stop Oil. And also, he was very, very
Oh,
keen.
boy. Well, somebody cut that off, like, real quick. Like, bruh. Just Stop Oil is a borderline terrorist organization, in my opinion.
Show his feminist credentials because he owns a football team. And he had just hired the first female manager of a football team. But there was a slight problem, which he only made her the caretaker. And I saw a potential flaw here. So let's see what went down when I interviewed him. You didn't think by appointing the first female caretaker manager of a professional men's team you would get any attention?
She's the best candidate for the job at the club. This is what happens. You look at within the club, you find your best coach, and you say, take the team in an interim.
So he clearly doesn't want to answer the question. The answer is yes. I wanted to use this as a publicity stunt.
A period while we do a proper recruitment process. That's all that's happening here. Why do you keep coming back to that?
Because she's only a caretaker.
Look at our record of appointments.
She's only a caretaker.
Look at our record of appointments.
So if you believed in her that much, you'd have made her manager. You've got all the publicity, but actually she's not got the full
That's
job.
Not how it works.
And I suspect what's going to happen is you're going to go and find...
understood football.
You're going to probably go and find a bloke to replace her, and then you're going to have to deal with that.
Oh, that's probably true.
I thought you understood football, Piers.
I do. I'm an Arsenal fan.
Did.
Well, you might be massively unsurprised to learn that 12 days later, Hannah Dinkley has been removed from her job as caretaker.
Yo, now, okay, now it's one thing though if she did get removed for being harassed for being a woman, which if that was the case, then that's totally uncalled for. Or, you know, for, like, pressure on the internet from people who are mad that she got hired. Like, that's totally uncalled for and definitely something that can't be defended. But if she was removed because she wasn't good at doing her job or she kept on hooking up with the players, like...
Take a manager and replaced by a man. Yeah, Dale talked a good game on feminism and women's rights, and boasted about it and got all the publicity. And in the end, he got rid of her after 12 days and put a bloke in charge.
That's funny.
And you can make your own view about Mr. Vince for doing that. Lovely to see you both. Thank you both very much indeed.
Oh, goodness. Well, that was certainly fun. Not as bad as the debate that we had before. You know, just pearly things sort of, to an extent, let Grace sort of, you know, just blunder about and make her own L's, right? Instead of, you know, pearly things saying a bunch of things that didn't make sense. She did say a couple things that didn't make sense. But it's a shame that these sort of debates are generally held by like people who are not really the best at articulating their position. And Grace Blakely, I wish she was, you know, kind of more willing to face like the repercussions of her position head on. Because it seemed like she was kind of afraid of certain things. When it's like, when people are like, oh, like, are women as good as men? Like when it comes to like technical skill, oh, well, they're just different. Okay, well, if you got rid of all gendered sports and just had completely ungendered sports, would women win medals? Oh, well, it's different. Like, yes, it's different. And that is the point.